To start with Councillor Ryan, you have 5 minutes, then it will be Councillor Turney 5 minutes, Councillor Cohen, I'm going to allow you 5 minutes, and then we'll progress from there. Councillor Ryan, this is your maiden speech, right? Excellent.
Mr Mayor, as is the custom on the occasion of maiden speeches, Councillor Peter Zinkin and I would like to recognise the many years of service given in the Charles Hill Ward by Lord and Lady Palmer, and we wish them a happy retirement from their duties in Barnet. Mr Mayor, the motion put before the Chamber this evening calls on the Council to introduce an Article 4 direction to remove permitted development rights for the change of usage from C3 dwelling houses to C4 houses in multiple occupation, thus bringing this change of use under the direct control of the Council as a planning authority. This motion is brought in response to residents' concerns in the Charles Hill Ward over the growth in numbers of houses in multiple occupation, HMOs, and the resulting pressure on parking provision, negative impacts on the physical environment and streetscape, and increased noise, as well as the loss of family accommodation. I've been made aware by members of neighbouring wards that residents have expressed similar concerns. Article 4 directions were introduced in October 2010, giving local planning authorities the scope to limit the permitted development rights granted under the General Permitted Development Order, thus taking into account local impact. An Article 4 direction can be implemented across the whole of the borough or to a specific ward. Once implemented, change of usage from a dwelling house to an HMO will require a planning application to be submitted, which will be considered by planning officers through the normal planning process, including, and most importantly, the proper consultation with neighbours and agencies such as Highways and Environmental Health. Let me also make it clear, the introduction of an Article 4 direction is neither retrospective, nor will it lead to, as some have implied, a ban on the future development of HMOs. Indeed, Barnet's current local plan identifies HMOs as an important source of low-cost private sector housing for students, those on low incomes, and those seeking temporary housing. Bringing HMOs under the direct control of Barnet will enable planning officers to consider and encourage HMOs where they meet an identified housing need, but in the context of local impacts. The motion as detailed also notes that the immediate implementation of an Article 4 direction designation carries the risk of those seeking to convert a property to an HMO claiming compensation from the borough within the first 12 months of designation. Therefore, I am calling for a non-immediate Article 4 direction to come into effect 12 months after implementation, obviating the financial risk to the borough. The case for the implementation of Article 4 directions is evidence-driven, and the anecdotal reports of ward residents that the southern end of the borough is an HMO hotspot is supported by the hard evidence following street surveys conducted by officers. As further hard evidence comes forward from the various stakeholders, a clearer borough-wide picture will be mapped, and this will inform Council on the extent of the geographical implementation of the Article 4 direction when it comes before the Housing Committee. I recommend this motion be brought forward as soon as practical within the work programmes of the appropriate committees, and I have no doubt that all members, whichever side of the chamber they sit, will want to support this motion in full.
Councillor Turney, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Labour policy, go for it.
In responding to Councillor Ryan's motion, I would congratulate him on his maiden speech, which was very good indeed. Mr Mayor, the fact that any two-storey house can be converted into a HMO without planning permission or a licence from environmental health is, of course, a serious concern for us all. It is a serious matter. Also, as I state in my amendment, HMOs set up without the benefit of planning permission or licence from environmental health, as most of them are, can be a danger to health and safety of those who live there. This is not mentioned in Councillor Wright's motion, the health and safety of people who are obliged to live there. However, while all this permitted development is resulting in a proliferation of HMOs, the underlying problem is the acute, unprecedented shortage of affordable housing in the London Borough of Barnet. That's the nub issue, but again, it doesn't merit a mention in Councillor Wright's motion. The HMOs have a higher risk of fire and overcrowding. They are indeed a dangerous enough enterprise by times. However, a house, a flat, a roof over your head is an absolute necessary of life. And a society that allows that to get beyond the reach of so many of the citizens, as we have done here in Barnet, is a society that has quite frankly failed its people. A failed ideology. It really is all the right to buy and selling off in social housing. As councillors, we are reminded of this failure at our surgeries every week, with the residents desperate for suitable affordable housing. But what can we do to help? There's no stop. Very little in the borough where so much of our councils talk has been told off with the right to buy. And the smallest one-bedroom flat will cost in excess of £300,000. It's just unreachable for young people. It's just unreachable. And then, of course, we have our housing allocation scheme. But you know, it's not friendly. On our web, I just read this afternoon, on our web in our allocation section, we state, we state on the web, there are very few council properties available in Barnet. Most people will not qualify for help with the housing. So that's the door firmly shut. There are still, however, on a weekly basis, 1,400, 1,400 urgent cases under consideration every week for people in desperate circumstances. So what can we do? As Councillor Ryder said, and I tried to say, we do need these HMOs. And in their local plan, we say proposals for HMOs will be encouraged, provided they meet an identified need. Well, we got that through the inspector a couple of years ago now, and the need has hardly diminished in that time. So what can we do? We need these HMOs because we're in desperate housing need. But there are concerns, and of course there are concerns about the safety of the people who rise to live in these often unsafe lodgings. A greater concern, I would suggest, than the untidy gardens and too many to-let signs that Councillor Ryder is talking about. They're a nuisance as well, but not exactly a safety risk. Often, the shoddy HMO business, the often shoddy HMO business, is thriving here because people who are in housing need will often need to take whatever accommodation is offered. And the people who have these houses to rent out in this way, and we've all dealt with them, we see them when we go on planning site visits. The people who have these houses to rent out in this way could hardly be described as the most conscientious and caring. We know them from our casework, that they are quite the opposite. We can and we should try the Article 4 route to try and control this problem. But of course, as the Councillor pointed out, it could not be retrospective. Still, we should try it. However, we should also try environmental health. And you know, if we increase that department and increase the number of officers, they can move in at any time and say, look, that's unsafe, that's illegal. You know, we would have to do that. But the health and safety of our residents is paramount to us all. We have, you know, the Article 4 route should be tried. It's been tried elsewhere. I mean, it's tried with betting shops and all sorts of things. And of course, there's all kinds of court cases and things.
Policy.
You'd have to give them 12 months' notice anyway. And it's not retrospective. It's limited, but it should be tried. But there is a solution in their environmental health department, and they're very good at doing it, and they're doing it already, but they need strengthening. Thank you very much. I move my time.
Councillor Jack Cohen, 5 minutes.
Can I just congratulate Councillor Ryan on his maiden speech and for his kind words about my colleague Lord Lady Park. I'm aware, because we actually shared quite a bit of casework of some of the complaints that are coming from our residents in Charles Hill. And the reason why it's so different in Charles Hill, of course, is Quickwood in particular. It's almost like in the city borough, where the demand for housing from residents that counted in the disparate is desperate, encourages and stupid landlords, in my view, to exploit these desperate people. And that is why I think the council should take every step to support the motion to ensure that these HMOs are properly regulated. But I would caution the council, because I'm sure the motion will be carried this evening, to think something might happen. Am I being too cynical? Because I'm not sure what the motion instructs the officers to do. It certainly doesn't exactly instruct them to issue an article for direction, as it says that. But that should be by the by, in my view. And I hope that, even if it doesn't precisely say that in a year's time, officers will come back to us and say, well, that wasn't our instruction, just go ahead and produce an evidence base. I'm sure Council Wright wants more than an evidence base, wants things to be produced. I'm not quite sure maybe Council Wright can answer this and comply. Who's responsible for issuing the Article 4 direction? I suspect it's somebody in planning, or maybe it's housing. I'd like that clarification. Why the 12-month delay? I don't know. I'm assuming because officers say there's a risk of compensation. But from what I know of other local authorities who have introduced it without a 12-month running period, there has been no claims of compensation at all. And in fact, I suspect these rogue and scrupulous landlords are the ones that want to put their heads above the parapet and go for compensation. They want to keep low and stay out of the radar. They're not ones to get any compensation. And of course, it is not retrospective. So don't think that we're going to get rid of HMOs regulation by introducing an Article 4 direction. Because any of those in existence until the order is made will remain as HMOs. And finally, the one thing that is missing from this, perhaps I should have put an amendment, my fault, I'm sure it's secondary, is there's no commitment to put anything into the budget to pay for this. Because it's my understanding that if an Article 4 direction is made, the council cannot charge for planning applications. So it's a considerable cost to the council. They don't get a planning application fee, and it has to go through all the processes. In fact, I presume there will be objections to committees, we will work with committees, so there's nothing wrong with that. But that costs money. And I think there needs to be some commitment, someone in charge, Council Wright can't make that commitment, that there will be budget provision to provide for this. If that commitment is made, if it's confirmed that even though it's precisely after HMO, for Article 4 direction to be made, it will be made, I'm entirely supportive of this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Curran. Councillor Davies, you have up to four minutes.
Thank you, Mr. I'm sure I'm not going to need 4 minutes. I think actually it's a fairly straightforward issue. Before I move into making the second speech, there's just one point I'd like to clarify that some of the Labour members have been putting across the chamber this evening. And that earlier, Councillor Moore, I think correct me if I misquote you, that you said that councillors should treat council meetings as the pinnacle of business, words to that effect. But that does raise the question, Mr. Mayor, as to why so many Labour councillors thought that they could forego council business and go on a political jolly halfway some Labour members managed Don't you dare tell her colleague from their colleagues.
Mr. Mayor, words are offensive and it's inappropriate and unworthy.
Thank you. Councillor Davey, would you please speak on message to the motion?
Yeah.
Apologies, Mr. Mayor, I thought I was 100% on message, but Mr. What Councillor Ryan is putting forward is a perfect Conservative motion. It's about light touch government. It's about facilitation, letting people get on with their lives without all the council interfering, but making it possible for people to go about their actions whilst respecting their neighbours and whilst we can protect our existing residents and the character of our area. I'm not going to go into too much detail. Councillor Ryan has made everything clear. I'm just saying, in the short time he's been on the council, he has championed this point very, very proactively for his residents, and actually it raised a point which turned out to be valid for many other wards, which Labour councillors in that working groups on the housing committee were pleased to see this item coming forward. So it should gain cross-party support. So, Mr. Mayor, on that note, I'm happy to support Councillor Ryan's motion.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Alison Moore, you have up to 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and therefore I will start by saying the message I took from the previous speaker is where I thought the decision to move the meeting was rather childish and spiteful. He has just confirmed that view, I'm afraid. Yes, it was the most juvenile intervention I've made in a long time. Mr. Mayor, when I was a student, I'll come back to grown-up politics later. When I was a student and looking for accommodation for my second year, I was shown a number of rooms. One sticks in my mind: a landlady with a huge bunch of keys and a room with quite literally a dirt floor, a hole in the wall and a single light bulb. Needless to say, I found somewhere else to live. And times have changed, but the housing shortage, rents rising to unaffordable levels, and some unscrupulous and cavalier landlords make housing a really difficult issue. HMOs are not in and of themselves a bad thing. The households I lived in as a student and as a young researcher were effectively HMOs, houses with 3 or 4 of us living together, but it's not what we called them, we just called them house shares. Some landlords were better than others, some groups of young people were rather better behaved than others. And of course, antisocial behaviour, noise, disturbance, etc. are not restricted to HMOs. I'm sure we all get casework from and about council, housing association and private tenants, and sometimes about homeowners. But the reality is that with larger houses in some parts of the borough that may not be appealing or affordable as family homes, and the sorts of rents landlords can command mean that we may well face a rise in HMOs. The ability to use an Article 4 direction will be useful. It would allow us to identify and control those conversions in particular parts of the borough where they are problematic. Indeed, it would appear that you are considering an Article 4 direction for both HMOs and betting shops some time ago, when we voted down our motion proposing just that for betting shops and payday lenders. It's a growing pattern. You rejected our motion on the energy switch and then lo and behold you signed up for it. So that's not really very grown-up politics. Of course, this is a tricky issue. You need to follow a process whereby you don't lay yourself open to claims for compensation, but giving 12 months' notice brings in the ability to use an Article 4 direction, which could force a change of use from a dwelling house, to an HMO, runs the risk of a rash of conversions prior to that implementation. However, it's been successful outside London, and now London boroughs are taking this forward. Barnet has a range of best practice and I'm sure lessons learned on which to build, but the reality is that it will take at least a year and a half to get to the point where Barnet can use an Article 4 direction if we follow that process. It is important to follow the process properly and to identify the resources required, both to make the process work and to enforce it once it's in place. However, once in place, Planning Permission will be required for those changes from an A3 to A4, the smaller HMOs. It will allow the council to apply conditions. Bin storage comes to mind, but soundproofing, hard and soft landscaping also may come into play. These might do much to mitigate the impact on neighbours, and I'm sure good landlords have little to fear. Finally, I commend Councillor Tierney's amendment to you and ask that you vote for it. The point it makes about health and safety is one that is well made. It is incumbent on the council to ensure through this process that the interests of tenants as well as those of neighbours are protected. And I hope that you will accept it so that we can all vote together to take action on this important issue. That will be grown-up politics, and I hope we can do that in the interests of the people of Barnet. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Ryan, would you like to sum up? You have up to 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I'd like to reassure Councillor Cohen that Councillor Melvin Cohen will ensure that this does go through. I understand that there will be a report on the 27th of October in the Housing Committee, and in the November Council meeting, or the November meeting, it will be followed through. So you can be assured that this is an item that will be followed through and will be given. I will certainly be championing it along with Councillor Cohen. With respect to the amendment, I am going to move that we do not accept the amendment. And I want that to be I want that to be clear that that's not a political. I'm not playing politics here.
You are.
The reason I am not accepting this amendment is because the amendment as put is a statutory duty of this local authority of Barnet, which is covered by environmental health. And it is not something that needs to go into an amendment on an Article 4 direction, because it is something that is already enforced, and it is something that we as councillors should be doing our job to ensure that officers are ensuring that environmental health and safety in HMOs is something that is seen through. So I do not move that that amendment should be accepted.
Thank you very much indeed. Now we will vote on Councillor Tierney's amendment. All in favour of Councillor Tierney's amendment, please show.
It wouldn't hurt to accept amendment 1.
21, Mr. Mayor.
All against Councillor Tierney's amendment.
Huge.
Come on, you landlords. 29, Mr. Mayor. So the amendment is lost.
Thank you.
Can we take the division, please? Excuse me, the division has been called. I'd like you to take the division.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, Councillor Rayner.
Against.
Deputy Mayor, Councillor Longstaff.
Against.
Councillor Braun. Councillor Chalice is absent. Councillor Coakley-Webb.
For.
Councillor Dean Cohen. Councillor Jack Cohen. Councillor Melvin Cohen. Councillor Philip Cohen. Councillor Cook. Councillor Alison Cornelius. Councillor Richard Cornelius.
Against.
Councillor Davey. Councillor Dushinsky. Councillor Edwards is absent. Councillor Farrier.
For the protection of vulnerable people.
Councillor Finn. Councillor Gordon. Councillor Greenspan. Councillor Helena Hart. Councillor John Hart. Councillor Houston. Councillor Hutton. Councillor Ioannidis. Councillor Kay is absent. Councillor Cattry. Councillor Langlaben. For. Councillor Levine is absent. Councillor Lyons. Councillor Marshall. Councillor McGurk is absent. Councillor Mitra.
For.
Councillor Moore.
For and with no dispensation to vote.
Councillor Naqvi. Councillor Narinthira.
Strongly for.
Councillor Overcorley.
For dignity and democracy for the people in this London Borough Party.
Councillor Old. Councillor Orbach is absent. Councillor Patel. Councillor Perry. Councillor Prentice.
Well, at least everyone stood up this time. Against.
Councillor Rajput. Councillor Rawlings. Councillor Roberts, I believe, is absent from the chamber. Councillor Rosenberg. Councillor Rutter. Councillor Ryde. Councillor Salinger. Councillor Sargent is absent. Councillor Scannell is absent. Councillor Schneiderman is absent. Councillor Seal. Councillor Shooter is absent. Councillor Slocum. Councillor Sowerby is absent. Councillor Stock. Councillor Thomas. Councillor Thompstone. Councillor Tierney. For. Councillor Trevedden is absent. Councillor Williams. Councillor Zinkin. Councillor Zubari. For the amendment 21, against the amendment 29, 13 members not present for that one, so the amendment is lost.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nathan. So now we vote on the original motion. All in favour, please show.
Voting for is the grown-ups in this chamber.
All.
This we don't go to
Now, before we move on to the next item, I'm sure Councillor Rawlings would like to withdraw his comment and the current threat, which I'm sure was not a threat. Please, Councillor Rawlings, would you like to say a few words?
I'm not quite sure what somebody considered a threat. What I was saying is that if you're voting against improving health and safety, including fire safety in HMO, you've got to take that responsibility upon yourself. We pray and hope nothing ever goes wrong, but remember, you have voted to reduce or not increase fire safety in HMO. I think you need to justify yourself and withdraw your vote. So I will not withdraw the vote.
I look forward to seeing the next Labour budget. We now move on to